All right, we're ready to get started. Today is Tuesday, February 10th, 2026, and this is the City Council's work session that I am calling to order and giving notice to the public and to members of the City Council that at this meeting, the City Council may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for consultation and advice from the city's attorneys on any item listed on the following agenda. Can we have roll call?
Mayor Daggett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Sweet,
Here.
Councilmember Aslan,
Here.
Councilmember Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember House,
Present.
Councilmember Matthews,
Here.
Councilmember Spence.
Here.
Councilmember Spence, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Councilmember Matthews, could you read our mission statement?
The mission of the City of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
And Councilmember House, would you read our land acknowledgement?
Thank you, Mayor. The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you. All right. We are moving down to open call to the public, which enables the public to address the council about any item that is not on our printed agenda. And because it is not on our agenda, we are unable to comment or answer questions. And you have 3 minutes. There's a clock right here. And our commenter is Ira Allen.
Mayor, council members, hey there, folks. I wanted, first of all, to commend you all for both your decision to cancel the city's contract with Flock and ensuring that you sped the way for their nominal removal of everything on the 5th. We have yet to see an update about that. So I just wanted to flag that for council, that there's an articulation of a plan to update everyone once they're gone. I know it's been a bit of a busy week in terms of news events, so it could get lost. I also wanted to note, perhaps council knows this already, but there's been quite a bit of reporting of Flock's refusal to leave or surreptitious reinstallation of cameras after the contracts are canceled. This happened in Cambridge, Massachusetts, reinstallation of cameras after canceled. Evanston, Illinois, non-completion of their contract to remove all cameras. And Eugene, Oregon, continuing to track after supposedly turning off cameras. So I just wanted to flag that for council and ask you to be diligent in following up on that. Thanks again for responding to the clear democratic will on that. Appreciate you all. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. And staff, the update has been sent out, correct?
Mayor, Council, yes, we have the update on our website as well. We sent out a press release on that.
Thank you. All right, Audria Smith.
Hello. My name's Audria Smith. I'm a resident at Bushmaster Park. Now I'm aware that sound mitigation will be discussed today. I'm kind of surprised because we brought it up in 2023. Based on my experience representing neighbors of Bushmaster Park during the original discussions in the summer of 2023 about whether to build pickleball courts.
Ms. Smith, is this specifically about pickleball courts?
Not about sound mitigation, because I realize this is about the sound mitigation.
Okay.
Would you like me to, but it does have something to do with my other complaints now that I've lived with it a while and during the construction. I'm willing to wait till then if you
I
think
think
it's...
that that would be best so that we can ask you questions, we can have back and forth.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
Chelsea Green?
Okay, hi. I'm back because it's Flock. And they're not down yet. I know you guys put up a thing saying something about February 5th or 6th, I think it was, originally. Not down as far as I can tell. I passed 4 on my way here. I'm here to encourage you guys to keep working on that. Have been researching. I've found at least 3 stories of other municipalities where after those, the contract has been canceled, Flock hasn't taken them down, and in at least one case, they had to take it into their own hands, and in that case, they used literally just black plastic bags, which could work for us. So thank you for keeping up on this. I do appreciate it. You guys are listening. Thank you. And keep working on that. That's all. We'll work on petitions if we have to, but we don't want to go that route. So thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Mayor, Council, just a clarification. So we did put something on our website that stated that we were working with Flock to remove the cameras and that we were hoping to have those removed by February 5th. So we're actually checking right now to see where we are in that process, and we'll bring back an update.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Are moving down to a review of the draft agenda for the February 17th City Council meeting. Council, do you have any questions, concerns, comments about the agenda? Now we are moving down to discussion about noise mitigation at Bushmaster Park.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, Amy Hagan, Assistant Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Events Director. All right, we are here to have a discussion about noise mitigation at Bushmaster Park, specifically about the sport courts and pickleball specifically too. Some history before we dive into any discussion. So the capital improvement project, it did implement the 3 items at the direction of City Council dating back to 2023 and 2024. It was item number 1, ensure that the pickleball courts are as centrally located as possible in the layout and design. For every tree removed for the project, replaced with a tree. There were, just for information, 21 trees removed with 21 trees replanted of a different species along with 74 shrubs. And I mentioned the shrubs because unfortunately the shrubs counts do not count toward a tree. But so those were just some additional landscaping improvements with the overall project. The third item was adjust city code for park hours and sport court lighting hours, and that was completed in November of 2024. And that city code changed, so all sport court lighting on any tennis court, basketball court, pickleball court where there are lights ends at 9 p.m. and parks close at 10 p.m., just for that reference. So then let's talk about some of the Flagstaff public pickleball courts. We have at Ponderosa Park in the Sunnyside neighborhood, we have 2 courts, no lights. We have at the Bushmaster Park, 8 courts with lights. They're the courts there kind of on the top half of your page. That was a drone image during construction. And here's an image of those courts at night, again via drone, so that way you could see how the lights shine down and truly just shine directly down. There's not much of an off light that occurs outside of the court perimeter. So the Ponderosa Park public pickleball courts, they've been there since August of 2021. Again, those are those 2 courts in Sunnyside, no lights. The Bushmaster Park pickleball courts began in August of 2019, where the existing or previous 2 tennis courts, 2 basketball courts were dual striped for 8 pickleball courts, and that came with lights, and that's August of 2019. Then there's reconstruction that occurred and opened in mid-November of 2025, where we've got 8 pickleball courts lighted, 2 tennis courts lighted, and 2 basketball courts lighted. And in talking about noise mitigation specifically at Bushmaster Park, because Ponderosa Park was not mentioned in that discussion, staff recommendation would be to experience the summer of 2026 and revisit if directed by council, because we've just had a couple months here of being open out at Bushmaster Park, and those are in those winter months. And now time for discussion and direction.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Amy, for the presentation, and thank you for bringing this back up. I know it was Councilmember Spence's fair item, and it's always nice to have these discussions that are generated from council at the dais. So thanks for being amenable and bringing the presentation. My question is, it really points to the last slide that you showed us before this, and just did you guys take any, is there a metric? Have you guys gotten any data on usage up till now, or I guess frequency? And the reason I ask that is because I still think that we are a little bit away from the busy season on this, and we are a little bit away from folks playing at night. And I think that's going to be where we're going to have to figure out if there's mitigation, how there's mitigation, what kind of mitigation we're going to have to deal with. So I too question, because I visited the park several times and actually didn't hear a lot of noise from the pickleball court, which was possibly attributed to how the design of the pickleball courts were installed. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but I've spent quite a bit of time at Bushmaster Park checking it out, and maybe it's just the time of year, but I haven't heard a lot of that pinging noise. So that's why I asked that question, is really just to see if there's any data that shows that we need that, or if any sound data or information, or if we are going to maybe hold off on it until we get some of that data, are you guys going to be proactive in getting us that data?
Appreciate the question, Councilmember Garcia. So you are correct. We have not, it has been less than 4 months since the pickleball courts have opened at Bushmaster Park. We do not have any data or metrics that we can pull as far as how many players or at what time of the day. Just knowing that lights are not operable after 9 p.m. and park closes at 10 p.m. We've obviously had some unseasonable days. So I would assume there's been a lot of daytime activity and maybe not nighttime, because it is definitely cooling off. So I would agree with you there that it might be good to attempt to take some of those metrics or data points as we peel into late spring or summer, when we normally see a higher activity in any of our parks in general. The one research item that I was able to do was working with, they're out of Kansas City. It's a noise mitigation manufacturer. It's essentially almost resembles closely to what a windscreen would look like along chain link fencing, very thin layer of noise mitigation that can be rolled up, because I inquired obviously about what happens in our winter months when we get snowfall. Bozeman, Montana Park System is a recent parks group that did install these. The metric that manufacturer can use is that it reduces the dB level, the decibel level, by a quantity of 10. But without knowing what our current metric is on that, we just know that it could be potentially reduced by 10 if that product was installed around pickleball courts.
Excellent. I appreciate the commentary, and it helps me kind of put some pieces together in my own head. I'll probably have some comments after public comment. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions and then comments after public comment. I'm wondering, have we had any noise concerns brought to us since the courts were installed? And from your perspective, are the mitigation measures performing as expected? And if we do get a complaint, how do we track that and how do we address it?
Sure, thank you, Vice Mayor. PRO's staff have not received a complaint, nor do I think City Council has since mid-November when these courts opened up. If a complaint were to occur, we immediately are going to obviously track those complaints, start to dive into the details of the complaint themselves. Is it my opinion that the layout and design has assisted potentially with noise? It would be. Not only were the courts centrally located in the layout as directed by City Council, but also the pad, the earth was built up about 4 feet tall from the original location. So previously, when you used to stand on the prior courts, your eyesight would be directly at about the fence line of adjacent residences. Now it's up above at about the top of the roof line. What that does with sound, though, I'm not a sound expert, so not sure, but inherently it makes me think that maybe sound is going out a different way, but we have not performed a study to fact check that.
Thank you, and I do want to thank you and the team for really listening to the concerns of the neighbors surrounding the park. I know that you and I went out there several times to look at things, and I do feel like you've done a great job on listening and being proactive, and I truly do appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Spence, did you have a question? A comment, okay.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to express my thanks to PRO's staff for keeping me informed of developments around the pickleball court creation, and I agree with this recommendation that we wait through this summer season to see what the noise levels are and how they're impacting the community. When I was looking into this, I found noise mitigation panels that could be attached to a chain link fence that the manufacturer says reduces the noise level by about 25 decibels. So there are ways to mitigate. There are downsides in terms of visibility, so it'll have to be a careful consideration, but overall, I'm pleased with the approach that PRO's is taking. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to take public comment. Audrea Smith.
Well, I'm here to tell you that the noise, yes, there's very minimal play there right now because it's the dead of winter and the Phoenicians aren't here and the tournaments aren't here. But yes, the level is very high, and I can see the daylight that the courts are putting out till 9 o'clock at night with the random 1 or 2 games going on. That's a big carbon footprint, if you ask me. And it's a lot of waste for 1 or 2 just diehard. They're there till 9 o'clock. These people are relentless pickleball players. And with just the 1 or 2 games, it's a loud pop. It's a resounding pop. And with the less of the ponderosa canopy that is not there anymore, it seems even more of an echo. I had comments about the lighting. It's very disruptive. It is definitely trespassing on my property. Like I said, especially with less ponderosa canopy. The light it's like daylight. And it also reflects on the underbelly of the canopy, what's left, and reflects, besides the direct light trespass, it's like daylight under that canopy. You know, back in 2023, my cohorts and I, my fellow neighbors, We did all this research on sound mitigation. We brought to you, we emailed you. I'm not very confident about this process because you didn't seem to really be very interested in the science and all of the information that was already available to why this was not an appropriate place to put all these courts, all these lights, all this. And sound mitigation was something you just completely blew off. It was not in the bid, and it had this whole thing about Bushmaster Park is shovel ready. Well, 2 years later, when you needed to have it right now and then, when construction started, 20 feet from my house is the easement into the park. And I had just had shoulder surgery a week before, and it was a very painful and long recovery. And 1 week later, the parade of dump trucks was going by my house 20 feet away with the clouds of silt and dust and silica and diesel. And I never was given any type of courtesy from the Parks Department that this was going to be disrupting my life for 6 months, besides the aftermath of all this.
Thank you.
My time's up.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councilmember Garcia.
Yeah, thank you for your testimony today and coming here and staying true to the process throughout. Sorry that you're not happy with the construction project that took place. My question for you is, I didn't hear a lot about the sound and the noise levels. If you could just kind of articulate what you're experiencing now with the sound and noise levels as opposed to before. And I know it's hard to do that because there's only a few people out there right now, which, I just wanted to hear from you real briefly.
It's a very loud echoing pop. And no, it's nothing like it has been the last couple summers. And no, I'm not going to complain. I'm tired. I have no fight left in me. We presented so much evidence, and it was a very demoralizing process. Connie left, my next door neighbor. She moved to Oregon. And she says in Oregon they love pickleball too. But there is no court less than 1,000 feet from any home or any business. And then my neighbor on the other side, Gail, it was the last nail in her coffin. She just died. She died in June. She was getting frail, but that broke her heart. It's been heartbreaking.
Thank you.
And so I guess all the construction is one other complaint I have, because it was relentless for 6 months. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to being subjected to all the noise this coming summer. It does seem like I don't feel like I'm going to have much privacy, because behind my fence next to my house, I can see all the play. It's so high. It seems like it's just exacerbating the sound more. But if we need to complain, I guess complain we will, but the data. We're just exhausted.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Jim McCarthy.
Well, first of all, hello, all my friends. Just a couple quick comments. I've talked to the neighbors. I've heard it myself. The real solution to this is, and I know you're not going to want to hear this, you need to move those courts. They do not belong right in back of people's houses. Now, I also know that council's probably not going to follow my advice. As far as how much noise is acceptable, I think what the rule on noise issues in the Grand Canyon is audibility. If you can hear it, it's a violation. And at the Grand Canyon, they limit where helicopters and planes can fly, but that's controlled by audibility. If you can hear it, it's audible. A lot of people put their kids to bed like at 8:30. I know of one woman that worked on a night shift, and she actually had to move because she couldn't handle noise during the day. So you always think, well, you know, in the day it's okay, but as long as we're quiet at night. For some people, that isn't really a good enough solution. Any mitigation you can do, we've talked about a couple ideas, is worth the trouble. If council is not willing to do what they should do, is relocate these away from residential. The other thing, there shouldn't be any lights there, because when there's lights, that encourages people to go there at night when other people are trying to sleep, relax, have dinner, etc. So I'm going to leave you with, I talked to my wife when I told her I was going to come here today, and she says, Jim, the one word you should leave with council is empathy. Council members need to show empathy for people that are affected by things like this so that they can have peace and quiet. Can you imagine if somewhere in the back of this room going, that's what pickleball does. Empathy, think about it. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Thank you. Council, who was, I know there were several comments, but I don't know who was first. Councilmember Garcia.
All right, so so I appreciate the commenters coming in and letting us know how they feel about this. Trying to think really quick. I didn't expect to talk right away. Okay, what I wanted to talk about was this. My direction, I guess I would say, is to, if the Parks Department can look into, when the busy season comes, I don't think it's gonna take all summer long full of data to figure it out. I think you're gonna know by, the first month in June, if you guys are diligent enough, you'll be able to figure out if there's gonna be some noise mitigation tactics that need to come forward. I don't know if that needs to come to council, personally. If you guys see that there's a need, you know from me that I agree that there's a need and that we should put something up. But also, if there isn't a need, then maybe that's where we should come back in front of council to give the data after the summer season with like a robust amount of data. So what I'm saying, I guess, to simplify it is if they need to go up because you guys feel the need, then don't come ask me. It's approved. If I say that in jest, I know that there's a process. But if you're concerned about if you think that there isn't a need for that, then maybe continue with the data and come at the end of the season, so that way we could at least discuss with the public on what we have discovered and the changes that we have made. That's my direction on 107. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I do want to acknowledge that I'm glad the neighbors have had a voice in this. I think that the final design of the courts were largely based on feedback from the neighbors, and thank you to staff for listening. I do believe this is a good example of council direction, staff follow through, and I know it's not perfect, but I think it's a pretty darn good outcome. So I don't personally feel the need for this to come back to council. I trust staff. We have summer months coming. I've been out there and there's pickleball definitely happening. But let's see what the summer brings. But I do trust that staff will address concerns that come up, and I don't need this to come back. I trust you all. I know you're doing a good job. I know you're listening, and that's my direction.
Councilmember House.
Thank you, Amy, for coming back with this, and thank you to the community members that spoke on this. I think this was one of the harder conversations that we had at the time because of just the having to weigh that line between the community members that were living adjacent to this area and the community members who were looking forward to the promise fulfilled of additional pickleball courts. And that's not really an easy balance to strike. At the time, I know we had a lot of conversation about noise mitigation, and it was decided at the time that it wouldn't be included. And I know that that wasn't a unanimous decision. So I actually do think that this is something I'd like to see brought back when we have that data about what the impact looks like in summer. I agree with holding off until, I don't know even though that, that we have to wait as long as summer because of how unseasonably warm it's been. If we continue with this pattern through spring, I think we'll start to see some more numbers as early as spring as well. So maybe looking to bring back between spring and summer, just to see if the numbers have grown and what that impact looks like. I would like to see information on the mitigation that you talked about researching, and if Councilmember Spence would be able or willing to share the information on the system that he looked at, just to see what the process would be if we could bring something like that to these courts. I know we had the concern about visibility, and one of the things that comes to mind is even with the comments that we heard about being able to see the gameplay, if the mitigation is put up and that even like blocks some of that visibility without fully blocking the visibility of the play area, if that might not be beneficial to kind of, I cannot think of another phrase than kill two birds with one stone, but basically address both of those concerns in one go. But I would like to see it come back, just to have that information. And if it was the desire of council not to have a full additional conversation, at least a pretty detailed memo or information on that, so that we could decide at that point if we want to see it come back for a full conversation. But I just feel I have almost no doubt that it will be back for further conversation.
Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. And this was such a thorough discussion over several council meetings, so I apologize for asking this, but refresh my memory. I know that before we constructed the new pickleball courts, we had striped over tennis courts. How many additional courts did we add?
Sure. So previously, there were 2 tennis courts, 2 basketball courts, and without a pointer, I'm not sure if I can, the location where if you see the 6 pickleball courts on the upper left-hand of the screen on this image, and then the 2 tennis courts that aren't completely colored on the bottom left-hand, that is where the basketball and tennis courts used to exist. Approximately. All courts were shifted, or I'm sorry, just these southern courts were shifted up about 17 feet away from the homes that are on the southern edge of the community park. So at that time, there were 8 dual striped courts on top of tennis and basketball. And now there are 8 permanent courts for pickleball play. So exact same number. There is no pickleball play allowed without a permit on the current tennis and basketball courts that are in turquoise. And the basketball courts do not have a perimeter fence around them, so they're honestly not going to be ideal for any sport other than basketball.
And also, we talked back then about hours. So can you refresh my memory on what the hours are?
The hours right now are lights until 9 p.m. all parks until 10 p.m. Where we used to have a variety in there, lights, I believe, used to go to 10 p.m., if not a little bit later. And then on the weekends, parks used to be open to midnight. And that honestly is just too confusing. So we went with very simple, opening at sunrise, close at 10 p.m. for all 27 of our parks. And then any courts that are lighted, the lighting ends at 9 p.m. every day of the week.
Thank you, that helps me refresh, because I know we had just so many good discussions about, the lighting, because we know that that can be disturbing for people to go to bed, so thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions? I have a question about Ponderosa Park. Do you have an idea of why, because there are houses right around there, do you have an idea why we don't hear complaints about this park?
Excellent question, Mayor Daggett. I don't know why we don't hear any complaints. There's significant play here, daylight hours only, because there are no lights. But the courts are anywhere from, they used to be about 25 feet away from a property, and the properties across First Street, they're approximately 90 feet away. And we do not receive complaints.
And do you have identified funding in the park's budget for sound mitigation?
PROS does not.
And when we discussed it before, can you refresh my memory roughly how much money we were talking about?
Sure, and I'm sure Councilmember Spence, I saw him raise his hand. So the product that I've briefly researched around our 8 pickleball courts, so that 6-pack there and then a 2-pack would probably be about $70,000. And Councilmember Spence, I'm not sure what you've been able to research cost-wise.
Yeah, the panels that I've been quoted would run around 100,000 to surround the 6 and then the 2 courts, leaving the space between the 6 and the 2 unmitigated. So a perimeter sound baffles around 100,000.
And because this has been a while ago, I'm trying to bring my memory up to speed. What we see now was the recommendation from the Parks and Rec Commission. Is that correct?
For
Bushmaster Park, sorry.
Correct, yes, for this to be since it's a community level park, for it to have amenities like this for the community, not just a neighborhood level park, correct?
Okay. Well, Councilmember Matthews.
I just had another comment. One thing that just came to mind, now that the courts are elevated, presumably to be, that sound level, like you see big block walls when you're building houses next to the freeway, right? I'm very open to exploring effective sound mitigation. I think that, is a good effort to help keep that balance. I think back at before it was announced that we were going to separate and give the pickleball courts their own space and not overlap. It hadn't really been, I hadn't really heard much about it, and maybe people just were tolerating it, and I don't know. But my point is, I'm just wondering, since this is now a new design, if you will, that it's elevated, rooftop high and over, I would like to just wait, maybe not to the end of summer, but when tournaments start coming in, because I don't want to do something that was a waste of money and now we have to do something else, because the spectators will want to see. And I've seen sound mitigation at some of the local restaurants that are thick pads. So it would be almost like an enclosed area with walls. I would like to just give it a little bit of time to see with the elevated courts, and I see a lot of trees around there where when they were on the tennis courts, there wasn't half the trees, it seems like. I would like to just get a little bit more data so that we can discuss it again, and, because maybe the sound curtains or whatever they're called is not the right solution based on what we have already. I would like to wait, so we're not doing something that didn't help, and then we have to turn around and pivot and do something else, and then cost the city even more money. So that would be my recommendation to, let's see, with just that elevation and the trees now that's surrounding that, let's see how different it is. And I know in the winter, noise is louder because the air is drier, is what I understand, or something to that. I'm not a weather expert, but I know that I've heard that the sounds are louder. So maybe just waiting for a month or so into the tournament season to see, is it worse, is it better, is it a little bit better, but it needs to be more better, and then let's see what kind of mitigation we can do after that.
Sure. Well, one point of, that might be of interest is I do know that the local pickleball association did reach out to me about 2 weeks ago, and an annual tournament that they have in the summertime, they're still going to do it in EU this summer. Probably because of something like the basketball courts don't have a perimeter fence around them. So it really limits the amount of courts, I think, that they can have effective tournament play on.
Councilmember Aslan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll weigh in here a little bit. I'm truly on the fence about this, and the pun there is kind of intended. You know, Councilmember McCarthy mentioned empathy, and I think that's a very powerful term. It's a very powerful sentiment. It's a very powerful thing to invoke. And I would think that all of us up here are successful up here to the extent that we do have empathy with the public. And this has been a very difficult conversation. It's been a very lengthy conversation, and it's one we've revisited several times. And it's not dissimilar to other noise issue conversations we've had in the past and are slated to continue having. So I'm just kind of thinking out loud about this. I would be amenable, and as I think that's the term Councilmember Matthews used, to exploring further mitigation here. And I would direct staff to make sure that the money necessary to implement those mitigations is available in the budget, whether we end up using it or not. And I'm very much on the fence about whether it would be necessary. The big problem for me is I'm not sure what we're waiting to find out. Going into the spring and the summer, we're not going to learn anything new about pickleball. We're not going to learn anything new about what various neighbors think about pickleball noise. And the most frustrating thing for me would be the outcome where we go ahead and utilize $100,000 to put up more noise mitigation, and it doesn't satisfy the residents whatsoever. So I think the question is, you know, is this, how binary is this? Councilmember McCarthy just mentioned that we should get rid of the pickleball courts altogether, and that's the only satisfying solution from his perspective. I apologize if I'm putting the wrong words in your mouth, but I'm just kind of paraphrasing some concepts here. If we're going for all or nothing, we're never going to achieve that. Anything we do here at Bushmaster Park is going to be some sort of compromise, and it's going to be some sort of failure to empathize with every member of the community. So what's the price tag we want to put on getting as close to a satisfactory result as possible? I'm willing to explore that, but I don't think we're going to learn anything from a study or, first of all, what are the metrics? I don't think anybody's going to agree on what the metrics are that where a solution arises from that. So those are just some live thoughts I'm having about this. It's very much a both and. There's no clear solution to me about this. If we're going to be able to mitigate sound substantially by implementing these noise mitigations, I would be willing to set the money aside to do that. But just bear in mind, council and the public, that I'm not sure it's going to change any hearts and minds if we do that. It might alleviate the experience for residents in the aggregate at the end of the day, but sentiments aren't going to change no matter what we do.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to add a clarification since I was the first to speak about using staff's investigation around the sound and the impacts on the neighborhood at a later date for Councilmember Aslan. And for that, Councilmember, I was really referring to this being a season, or the times that I've gone there since the new courts have been in, there's been less play than when it's going to be more active. So that was my suggestion on us waiting, so that way we could see what the impacts were when it was something that was being used from morning till the dead of night. And right now we don't have enough information. There's not that many folks playing all the time. So just for a clarification for the conversation and for council member as well. And thanks to Mayor and other council members for helping me understand that we don't have that money currently in the budget. When I mentioned that you guys should just take care of it if you think it's a problem, I forgot about the budget. So thanks for that clarification, and I will be excited to see this come back when you guys have a little bit more insight on the amount of play and what the current neighborhood is going to have to kind of be dealing with from here on out.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Aslan. You make a very good point. We have other conversations about noise complaints in town. And Councilmember McCarthy, said the solution in their minds is moving it, which is not going to happen. And so now we get back to, now we're just adding to it because zero noise is what's going to be acceptable for the neighborhood, and that we can't deliver that. And so, we put $100,000 into it for noise mitigation, then there's still going to be noise. 25% less than what it is now is still something they're going to hear. So I'm very torn with that, but you made some very valid points because you're right. There's no side is going to be happy with, what we come up with. So I don't know. I'm torn with it.
I recall during our conversation that you had brought forward some mitigation, and through our discussion, it was determined that it wouldn't lower the sound enough to be worth the money. I don't know if I'm characterizing the conversation correctly, but I do remember we talked about sound mitigation. And I fear that we're in that same place again, where we're trying to balance all these competing needs, and we could spend money and the neighbors might not even notice a noticeable decrease in sound. This company out of Kansas City, do you have any information about cities that have installed their product? And, you said that the decibel level is known to go down by about 10 times, 10%?
The numeric value, 10.
10, okay.
Yes.
Do you have any anecdotal information about whether cities were satisfied with that product?
I do. Thank you for the question, Mayor Daggett. So I believe Bozeman, Montana just recently installed the product. However, they also apparently closed their sport courts in the winter. Let's not go there, please. So I may not be able to get very much data from them right now, but as we all peel into March and April, I'm sure I can make some connections there. I believe also there's some Kansas City, more of like a country club location, so not really public, but private courts that have also installed this product. The product derived from actual pickleball players. go figure, wanting to help solve some of these community problems, honestly. What they do is, they did not visit our site, but what they do is they take a mapping aerial map, and they can use AI data to say when there are, say, this location of 6 courts, and if it was full with, gosh, what would that be, 24 potential players on it, playing pickleball, they can say this is the estimate of the DB level going out, and this is what your surrounding neighbors would hear, and that their product then would reduce that by a quantity of 10. That's all that they've been able to provide to me, and then I know it resembles very closely to like a windscreen that you'll see up on tennis courts or softball dugouts, items like that, that us as maintenance staff could roll up in order to do any needed maintenance if we had snow.
Let's hope that we do. Vice Mayor.
I guess I just wanted to clarify something myself. I appreciate this conversation, and I'm in line with my colleagues. It's not that I don't want you to explore, but I am trusting that you have been very transparent and very thorough in your work. And I guess I'm trusting that we get through the summer or halfway through the summer, and you might hear some feedback, you might not. But I do trust that you and the team will handle it. And if you need council involvement, then I leave it up to you to let us know that. But I don't feel like this needs to be something that absolutely has to come back. I feel like you've done a great job. I know that the neighbors will keep us informed. And I do appreciate the conversation tonight. I think it's important to have. But I'm kind of in line with Councilmember Aslan. I don't know from this point exactly where we can go, but I do trust that you will know that, and we'll know when to handle the complaints if they come. Thank you.
So in that sense, it would be like how you handle a lot of parks stuff, right? You work it into your work plan, you work it into your budget if it's something that is deemed important to the system and to this park specifically.
Yes, that's correct, Mayor.
So would the council be in agreement that, I mean, I think we're in agreement that at this point, we can't tell really what the sound's going to be like because it's winter and there aren't people playing. But how many of you would be okay with park staff just taking this and figuring out whether mitigation could make a large enough impact to warrant the investment? Councilmember Aslan, then Councilmember Spence, you had did you have a question? That was a thumbs up? Oh, okay.
That's why I didn't raise my hand. I didn't want to be confusing there. And sorry to interrupt the flow of you're trying to get to some consensus here. I think that's okay. There's a couple things I just want to clarify that I think we already know that noise at Bushmaster Park is going to be found to be loud. I'm not sure there's anything we're going to discover by going through this process. So just to clarify that point, maybe we can get to some details on what exactly is the DB level and what exactly $100,000 will do to drop it by a certain number. But again, qualitatively, I don't think that's going to change any outcomes at the end of the day. I'm willing to look into it because I think mitigating the noise level is a quality of life issue, and we are here at the city of Flagstaff to protect and enhance the quality of life for all. So I take that seriously. My other concern is that practically, I don't know that this can just be something left to pros. Ultimately, I think going to have to come back to council. So that's kind of where I'm at. If we can find a way for pros to just make the decision, I'm okay with that. But what I'm anticipating is that, you know, at the end of the day, direction needs to come from council, and this might be, you know, one of those things that stays sticky enough that it just goes right up the flagpole. So just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. City Manager?
Sure, Mayor, Council, I think Councilmember Aslan, are you referring if we need to bring a contract back for, yeah, so that would likely need to come back to council if it's above a certain threshold. Can I also get another clarification? So the comment earlier about trying to include something in the budget, is that something that all of council is interested in having staff look into?
Just to make a point, to the extent that we're not in consideration of that, then there's really no point to the rest of the conversation.
I don't know whether we're talking about in the current budget process that we're in now, or whether we're saying, let's get some information, let's find out more about what mitigation might result in, and then look at future budgets.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. That's helpful.
All right. Do you feel like you have enough?
I do, thank you. Thank you, appreciate the conversation this afternoon.
Thank you. All right, now we're moving down to 7, which is discussion about decoupling the site plan, concept plan requirement from rezoning applications.
Good morning, Mayor, or good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Give me one moment while I bring this up to full screen. Okay. So I'm Michelle McNulty, the Planning and Development Services Director. I'm here to talk about the rezone process and decoupling the rezone process from site plan. This is a fair item that was brought by Councilmember Matthews. But I do want to just take a moment to kind of frame why this conversation is so important. So we've recently undertook a project that I think you might be familiar with, the Land Availability, Suitability, and Code Analysis Project. And some really important things that we learned through that process is with our land availability that over 2,300 acres of our developable land is in the estate residential or rural residential zoning district, so ERRR, which is 1 unit per acre. And one of the top barriers that was identified in our development code from achieving our housing and climate goals is our rezoning process. And so there's a strong correlation between the fact that if we have a difficult or prolonged rezoning process, we're seeing more and more of our RR and ER zoned land being developed by right and not coming through the rezone process to be upzoned. So thanks for letting me take a moment to to make those connections. Okay. So I also want to start by just explaining that we do currently have 2 processes for completing a rezone. We have the direct to ordinance. That's the one that you see most often. It's the one that's usually for a single use, and it's tied to a site plan. And when I say a site plan, it is a fully approved, it has gone through all of the interdivision staff review process. It's completed all of its development impact analyses. And I'll show an example in a second, but it really is, the architecturals, the site plan, the use, drilled down to that zoning being contingent to that plan. And then we have the rezone with a concept zoning plan, and it decouples the rezone from the site plan review, but it does still require a concept plan. So this is kind of an example. You've recently seen this. This is the Lake Mary Housing Project. You can see it's a very detailed site plan. It's parking spaces, amenities, landscaping, drive aisles, everything that's literally measured out and could be built upon approval. Cut sheets, so we're really getting into some of the features of the property, and we're getting into that kind of level of detail that we're providing council to make their recommendation on a rezone. And then architecturals, again, you can see that they're very highly designed, they're measured, it's got the materials, the different modulations or the relief within the components, all meeting the standards of our zoning code. And then concept rezones, these have a little bit more flexibility. Sometimes you'll see we call it a bubble diagram. This is more typical of what you're used to seeing, though. It's not a single use. In this instance, this is the tracks. This is over at 4th Street and Route 66. So think about where Sportsman's Warehouse, Texas Roadhouse, and Chick-fil-A, Dutch Brothers, that whole development is actually under one large concept rezone. And so in that instance, you do see some parking. It's more just to kind of show how it's going to be in relation to the building and to the right-of-way. We call out that there's going to be different retail shops. Those retail shops might move. You might see that the retail is where a restaurant was supposed to be. So there's some flexibility, but for the most part, the uses that are identified are really kind of what that restricted use are going to be for the future of that site. Again, we're still looking to we have a requirement that you have to demonstrate what that building is going to look like. In this instance, they did prepare just some general elevations. Sometimes it might be pictures, kind of getting a feel for what the color scheme, materials of the site is going to look like. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's tied to these materials. Other times it might just be what's required by code. So, and kind of laying the land, I guess before I go into any of the opportunities and moving on to the next, is there any questions about the two rezone processes that I just quickly and probably understated what their processes look like? Okay, I'm gonna keep moving. So this, as I said, this was something that was identified as part of our last CAP project. It's something that staff has been putting a lot of thought to. How do we start to make this a more streamlined process? We've also asked our consultant team working on last CAP to look at different ways that we could remove the site planning or site plan from the rezone, or just in general streamline the process. I'm going to go through 6 different opportunities. And then what I'd like to do is kind of give a quick overview of each one, and then maybe come back to each to really get into a deep dive conversation. But if there's any clarification questions you have along the way, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay. So the first opportunity is the easiest. We could really just look at our application and streamline it. Staff has actually already been doing this. There's a lot of things that are duplicative between what we require for that direct-to-ordinance rezone and what we're requiring on the concept. We think we could probably get rid of some of the requirements on that concept and make it truly reflective of what it is that we're trying to do with the concept rezone, which is make it more flexible and less conditioned. The reason why we've been hesitant to do that just administratively, which we can do with applications, is because when council approved the concept rezone ordinance, part of what they considered was that application. And so really would like to get direction from you all if you're comfortable with us taking a look at that, kind of streamlining it. The other reason why we want your input is you're going to see a development the next application, and it's going to look different than what you've seen in the past. And so we kind of want you to be well aware of why you're seeing something different, and kind of where you would be comfortable with us going with that. The second opportunity is prohibiting overlapping applications. So a couple things happen when someone comes in for a concept zoning amendment. When you're coming in for the site plan, it's kind of like you're going through that whole process. And yes, you're doing a lot of work to get that site plan already dialed in. But theoretically, once you get that rezone, you can move into your civils with engineering and your building permit. So you're ready to go. Unfortunately, what happens sometimes with a direct ordinance is the process takes so long that either the market has changed, maybe material and labor costs have increased, or maybe materials are no longer available. And so the project that you come out of the rezone process with, you're not really building anymore. Now it needs to be valued engineered, things need to change. And if it's significant enough, it may have to come back to council. But the benefit of that process is you do get that site plan and you're ready to move on to your development. With the concept, it's just that, it's a concept. So, but the process still takes a little bit of time. So what we often see happening is an applicant will, while the concept rezone is going through the approval process, they submit a site plan for us to review. We don't encourage this, but we have nothing prohibiting an applicant from doing it. And so we want to work with our applicants and help them get their developments online. But then what happens is now you have a very detailed site plan, and you're starting to see comments that are tailored to that, and they bleed over to that concept plan. So we would like to just say we're only, if you're submitting a concept zoning map amendment, that we're only looking at that, and you cannot submit the site plan concurrent with that. And the reason why, again, we want to bring this to council is this is a change of how we've done business. I don't know that we would change code, but we would maybe write a written policy letting people know that we won't accept these. And some people may get upset and they're likely going to call their council member. And so we want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with, those kind of changes before we disrupt kind of how we've been doing business. But really there's a belief, and we've seen it time and time, that if there was just a focus on the concept application and not the site plan at the same time, we could probably get through the process a lot quicker. The third opportunity is just changing the applicability statement within our zoning code. As it's defined, the zoning code basically calls on having conditions of approval, and it really limits the flexibility that the planning director has in order to make any changes. And so it says that, it can be approved by the director provided that no additional external impacts to surrounding uses and infrastructure will result. So for that, we usually mean if you were to do an updated analysis, either on your water sewer impact analysis or your traffic analysis, and the changes would not impact the off-site requirements, that would remain under that threshold that could be approved administratively. And then it goes on to say, there is no increase or decrease in gross floor area, lot coverage, number of dwelling units, or building height in excess of what's permitted in Table 10-20-40-090A, and that's our minor modification allowances. So effectively, it's saying as long as there's a change that's within 10% of an increase or a decrease, we can do it administratively, and anything more than that requires it to come back to council to amend that concept plan through the rezone process, which can take about 6 to 9 months. So inherently, just the way that this language is, it implies that there's limited flexibility. So another change we could make is removing that language and making it more clear what flexibility we do want with the concept rezone.
Go ahead.
So Michelle, thank you so much for bringing this, and we talked about this the other day. Can you just restate, so I'm clear, in making this language, changing this, because you talked about currently we require the impact studies to be made, right? And so how would this change that?
So that's a different slide, but this language would basically, so sorry, I did talk, so that's a different slide, but for this, what we're saying is that measurement of that no additional external impacts to surrounding uses and infrastructure, the way that we would determine that is if someone had an approved concept rezone and they wanted to modify it, say they wanted to maybe it was a multifamily development that was going to be one building, and then they decided to change it to 5 buildings, and maybe adding a little bit of density or changing the bedroom counts. Sometimes just even changing the form of a building can have impacts because now you're maybe changing your ingress and egress and other things about that. So we would have it, if it would trigger an updated or a revised impact analysis, and that an impact analysis said it's not going to have any changes on the offsites, that would be considered within the threshold that we could approve administratively.
Thank you.
Does that clear? Okay, thanks. Sorry, sometimes the key is working to move the slide, and sometimes it's not. So thank you for the lead-in, Councilmember Matthews. So another change, and this is one that we've been talking about a lot lately for a lot of different reasons, and it is changing the requirements for when we have an impact analysis with a rezone. We do by right development all the time. All by right development requires, by right means that it's not coming in for an entitlement, it's not coming in for a rezone or a conditional use permit. It means that it is allowed. It just has to follow all the development codes. And we do that all the time. They require impact analyses, and we get the offsite improvements that come out of there. So it's important to note that we already have a process in place for these processes when we have specific projects. So part of the conversation with helping to streamline the process is, could we wait for the impact analysis, remove it from when we're doing the rezone, and have them be done when we're actually having this specific development? I think that would probably be more so with the concept rezone, because it's much harder to do an impact analysis when you're not entirely sure what your exact project is going to be. With the direct ordinance, you do have a specific site plan and a specific use. That's a lot easier. But the reason why we've been talking about this, and not just in the context of helping to streamline the rezone process, is that the state did just pass an ordinance. We've adopted it into our code that we have to have rezones completed, approved in 180 days. That means going through planning and zoning required public hearings, as well as city council. That alone takes about 4 months, which means we're really slowing down, or really jamming how much time staff will have to review a rezone case. We've always been a little bit flexible that we would start reviewing rezones while the impact analyses were under review. Because that 180-day clock is going to start the minute we accept that rezone, and currently a requirement of a rezone application is to have your traffic impact analysis and your water sewer analysis. We may have to start drawing a line and say we will not accept that rezone until your analyses are completely approved. And so that could actually add a lot of delay, but that might be one of the things we have to do to keep it at that 180 days.
Mayor, and I just wanted to make mention of this, and correct me if I don't have all the details, but this kind of jumped out at me because in my involvement with the temporary light that we're getting on the 66 and Woody Mountain, there's all this infrastructure that we required the developer to put in. I mean, it's capped off with this big concrete cap, and he put in, I was trying to see the dollar amount, but we can't use it because now it's outdated and obsolete. So it was a big amount of money, is that correct?
I would defer to Paul Mood to speak to that.
That's what he told me. Anyway.
Just to jump in on that, council member, before Paul, I think I see him trying to unmute.
Yeah.
There he goes.
Yeah, honestly, I was not with the city at the time of that project came in. It might have been that the developer wanted to do the traffic signal instead of giving us money towards it for the bases that are out there. But I would actually have to defer to Jeff Bauman because he would have been around at the time, and I don't know if he's on the meeting or not. but yeah, there are times when we do require stuff and it can, years later, not be needed or in the right spot, but we try to avoid that as much as possible.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
So thanks for that question. So, there's a lot of different ways to look at this. So one is, do we defer when we have the impact analysis, knowing that they're going to be required when there's a site project in front of us? We could also work with our partners in water services and transportation engineering to find out, is there maybe a different approach of, maybe there's a kind of a high-level impact analysis that can be done, that kind of lets us know what the big off-site improvements are going to be, and then maybe there's a more specific analysis that's done when there's a project. We could also look at greenfield development, areas that haven't been developed, that don't have infrastructure, that are going to require a lot more needs than maybe an infill project, and maybe we differentiate between the two. So I think there's a lot of different things that we can explore with this, but would like to know kind of where council is comfortable with us going. I just kind of want to add that one of the things we do need to kind of think about is with our WISAs, the Water Sewer Impact Analysis, that is how a development secures their water rights. And so we would want to maybe talk to them and figure out, is there another way to make sure someone could know that they will have water rights once they get their zoning and have their development come in. Again, none of this is insurmountable. We just have to put our brains to it and think through what are other ways that we can do business. Okay, the fifth opportunity is aligning our zoning code with the regional plan. So up until 2011, we had the development code, the land development code. There was a whole upgrade or overhaul of the zoning code. We now have Title 10, which is the zoning code. A couple things happened. Well, the big thing that happened with that is it condensed a lot of our zoning districts and combined them. So that's great, because you don't want to have a ton of different zoning districts. But what that means is that our zoning districts have a lot of uses in them. And so that can be kind of challenging to implement the regional plan and even to do some of these analysis, because when you do an analysis based on kind of a concept, you're kind of looking at what's the most intense use, what's the highest use that you could have here, knowing, okay, that's the threshold, but then you could develop kind of less than that. But when there's all these uses, it's really hard to really think about what could it be, and you start to get these like big TIA. So that concept TIA, the TIA associated with the concept rezone becomes a really massive project, and it really starts to force the developer into having, a very specific project and getting us away from the intent. The other thing that happened is that adoption from the land development code to what we have now with Title 10 happened before the regional plan 2030 was adopted. So typically what you're going to see is your regional plan adopted and then code following to implement that regional plan. Ours was reversed, so we've been kind of playing catch up for the last 15 years of getting the code to actually implement the regional plan. The good news is that this time around, we've really set it up to be what I would call the correct way, or the more traditional way, that we really are, if the 2045 plan is ratified, then through the last CAP project and everything that we've been doing to have those two projects be coordinated, we've really been looking at code that we could kind of come on the heels, if that is ratified, to start implementing so that we're seeing a lot cleaner opportunities for rezones. And one of the things I just want to kind of show, the big thing that is in that proposed document is, so this is from the draft 2045 plan, and this is showing that we've put land use designations on all properties. And then we've identified within those land use designations what are implementing zoning districts. So we're starting to kind of set the stage that if this is what the community wants from how we grow, then these are the zoning designations that start to implement that. And so that helps us start to move into a direction that then you can start to not condition the rezones if that is so how the community chooses. We did put a stopgap in the Regional Plan 2045 and with design guidelines. Normally, we try to stay away from design guidelines in the regional plan because design guidelines really should be in your code. But because we knew that there may be an area, a time where the code didn't have the design standards we want, and that there may be a desire to move us to moving to rezones that aren't conditioned, we put them in the regional plan. Then if it's ratified, we would still have some connection to that, those development, or those design standards. So there would probably be some form of conditioning or a tie to a site plan. But then the objective would be, if it's ratified, we'd come in with a code amendment pretty soon afterwards that was actually codifying those design standards and then amending the regional plan to take the guidelines that are in there out so that we don't have conflicts. And then lastly, just creating a policy for exactions, negotiations, and development agreements. So going to kind of go through these points out of order, but the best thing we can always do for our community and for development is to get the points that we're negotiating out of the negotiation realm and into code. Because when they're not in code, then we're only getting certain attributes that our community wants through a one-off rezone process. But there's some things that we can't get into code because we're preempted by state. So what would be really good is as much as we can get into code, get that into code, so that's black and white, everybody knows the rules. And then the things that we can't put into code, leave those for the things that could be incentives or otherwise part of the negotiation process. And then just kind of having some maybe direction from council of how we prioritize, the requests when we are negotiating rezone could help with that process quite a bit if we understood, within certain housing projects, what you would want to see, and then, what sustainable features, and then any other community attributes. So that could be something that we could work on with you. Those are the 6 opportunities that we'd like to discuss with you, and I'm going to turn it over to you all for questions.
Council, questions? Councilmember Aslan.
Thank you. So were the regional plan to pass, I think that this is the direction that the plan would suggest for us. I think they're synergistic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think the ultimate goal here is lowering cost and making it easier to build more. But the question for me is always going to be to be able to build more of what? And do we need these plans? How do we leverage this into developers making agreements for more affordability? Is one of the questions I have. Can we rezone with the condition that a certain percentage of the development be affordable, or require greater or maximum, a greater maximum density? So these are some of the questions that I'd like to hear explored a little bit more. Just trying to think through some of that. Generally, I'm enthusiastic and very bi-curious about this, but I want to know how we leverage it to the best extent, given the actual goals that we have in mind for exploring this.
Okay, so if I heard you correctly, exploring how we can still leverage some of the requests for affordable housing, and then also how to negotiate maybe higher density when there's a reason. Okay, thanks.
Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Definitely agreed. Generally, very supportive of this and all the opportunities this offers. I have a couple questions that I can also send you because I don't know that I would expect. Oh no. that I would expect answers on all of them right now. But similar to Councilmember Aslan, the first one was just in terms of the general shift that I'm sensing in this from the concept plans and development agreements, just what that does in terms of our ability to negotiate and leverage for community benefits. And if there are, essentially, if our current code-based incentives are actually strong enough to use them as leverage without those more binding concept plans or the development agreements. I'd be curious to see examples from peer cities where shifting in this way has created more opportunities for those sorts of public benefits, or if they have other incentives that are more feasible. Because one of the things that I often hear from whenever we get developer partner feedback is that the incentives as they are right now are not actually strong enough to make them feasible or attractive enough to take on, to build in either affordability or sustainability, or to do both. It's often choosing one or the other, and so potentially losing out on those opportunities. The next one was just about if we have a sense of infrastructure capacity thresholds that would warrant denying a rezoning application at the conceptual stage, or how we would distinguish between infrastructure that is seen as currently insufficient versus infrastructure that could, I think the text said that it could reasonably be made available. Just knowing that that would be moving more into that speculative realm, how comfortable the team was with pursuing that sort of speculation, or if they felt that that was a challenge. And I don't know if you want to speak to that one.
That one, that's one we have been grappling with because through the regional plan, there was modeling done. Some of it did not account for, like, for instance, the massive project that is potentially being proposed out at Woody Mountain. And so that one, you know, we do see a benefit from having a traffic impact analysis. But for the most part, we have some opportunities as we, I kind of hate always saying, well, there's another study, but we are doing the Safe Streets Master Plan. And so there is a lot of opportunity there, I think, for if we kind of get that kind of direction of how do we model the entire system to kind of know what land uses it can support. And I think there's an opportunity there to work with that team to figure out how do we kind of get, I don't know if it's like a complete accurate of what would be need to be built, but kind of that high level in general, like what would be reasonable to have this be built. And then I think with water services, I don't really want to speak for them, and I don't know if Lee wants to speak to that, but I'm less familiar with their modeling and kind of, but my understanding is it's like they will, you know, if there is a development project, I mean, you can throw money at anything, right? But it's a matter of how much money does someone have to put towards upgrades that then the project I think they're going to do really isn't achievable. And I think that gets to the concerns about will we get the density and what will these projects end up looking like. So I know I didn't really answer your question, but it is something we're thinking a lot about. We have a certain level of confidence in some of the modeling. I'll just say that, I'll be very honest. And there's others that we know we need to work on and get that level of kind of confidence.
Thank you for that. And that was more than sufficient for now.
Okay.
Just to know that you're grappling with it is, I think, enough.
Yeah.
So next question is just in terms of the potential perception issues from the community perspective, particularly if the community feels that what was approved isn't essential or isn't ultimately what's developed because of some of those looser requirements. I don't know if that's something that you're kind of grappling with as well, or what that kind of looks like at this point.
Yeah, it is something we're doing a lot of grappling, and that is also one of the things. And so part of that is there's, I think, a high pressure on us that we would want these projects to be amazing out of the gate, to kind of demonstrate that we can have looser conditions on rezones and we can still get really good projects. I think the other thing is, and this isn't necessarily a perception, but it's a reality, I think we need to get trust in our zoning code that it's going to provide guidance for the type of development and projects that we want to see. And that's why there's such that importance of making sure that if the 2045 plan gets ratified, that we are coming on the heels of that with code changes that really starts to incorporate some of the things that we negotiate for or we want to see, like I said, those design guidelines, making sure those get into code. Because the other benefit is that then it's not just the projects that are the one-off going through the rezone, but it's every development project that we get is incorporating those standards and kind of the vision of the community.
Thank you. Last question, promise. So I'm just wondering, is this planned to be a full transition or implementation strategy, or is there opportunity to take a piloted approach to ensure the community benefit and feasibility overall?
We are open to any and all of those paths. I think my answer to you would be, what is council comfortable with? I like the idea of a piloted path. Some of these changes are easy and they can happen quickly. Other changes require if the plan gets ratified. So I think just by the opportunities we brought you kind of phases it anyway, because there's some that we could start doing tomorrow if you let us loose. And there's others that we would probably want to kind of come back and have a lot more back and forth with you all to get direction.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. And I have comments, but I'm assuming that there's probably public comment cards, so I can wait for those until after.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Councilmember House almost asked my exact question, but to piggyback off of that, what happens if we go down this road, which I am supportive. I think this is a wonderful thing you're bringing to us, and I think it's needed. So thank you. What guardrails are there? So let's say we go down this path and we're seeing, option 3 really just isn't working. We've implemented, it isn't working. Can you explain the process of kind of backtracking and realizing that, and where do we go from there?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I might have a sneeze coming on. I feel sorry, tickle in my nose. I think to that point, I think what Councilmember House just said about maybe a pilot program, I think that's what we've learned with like the resource protection overlay, that the pilot program allows us the opportunity to try something out, but put kind of a sunset date to it. That way we can change course if we have to. We could make some of these things we could just do through policy. Policy can always be changed. We could make it very clear that this is a trial, and I think there's a lot of different ways we could do it. I think just as long as, my sense is, as long as we make these changes kind of outside of code, we're safest of being able to kind of backpedal and have flexibility.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to take some public comment. First, we have Charity Lee.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, Charity Lee, Capstone Homes. I sent you an email earlier this afternoon, but I'd just like to read my letter. So I'll get started since I'm running out of time. So Capstone Homes supports the proposed amendments to the city's conceptual rezoning process as outlined in the zoning map amendment recommendations memo. The current process deters an applicant from rezoning a property. A simpler rezoning process will encourage applicants to consider rezoning their property to a higher use category, which will bring more units to the market and further the city's housing goals. These changes are critical for reducing barriers to housing production. Currently, the concept rezoning application checklist requires site-specific design elements to be submitted submitted with the application, which significantly increases upfront costs and the time it takes to obtain rezoning approval. These checklist items are excessive, and many of the project design elements are unknown at this stage of the entitlement process. The application and review process should be simplified. A rezone should be approved based on conformance with a regional plan and allowed uses in that zoning category, not on a concept plan that could change. We support amending the Regional Plan 2045 land use categories as guidelines and codifying specific design standards in the zoning code, and support the proposed amendment of Section 10-20.50.f.1A1 for proposed amendment to demonstrate general consistency with the goals, policies, and land use category guidelines of the regional plan and any applicable specific plans. We support a phased approach to required infrastructure analysis as recommended in the memo, page 11, focusing on capacity analysis rather than design analysis at the time of rezone. We support the memo's recommendation 5, limit development agreement requirements on page 13. These proposed changes would improve the concept rezoning process by increasing predictability and efficiency, aligning the regulatory framework with the Regional Plan 2045 land use categories as guidelines, not rigid standards, will create a more consistent and efficient review process, reducing upfront costs and risks, by decoupling concept plans from development entitlement and simplifying submittal requirements. Developers face less initial investment and risk, encouraging more proposals for higher density housing. Encouraging housing production, a more accessible rezoning process could increase overall housing production and encourage the higher densities necessary to meet the city's housing targets. The land availability and suitability study identified significant potential for additional units if land is rezoned for higher densities. Aligning with peer city best practices, the recommended phased approach to infrastructure analysis and limiting development agreement requirements to essential uses aligns Flagstaff's practices with other municipalities. And obtaining public review, the amendments preserve substantive public review of land use density decisions, as all rezonings will continue to follow current public hearing and neighborhood meeting requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. We have, sorry. Councilmember House has a question for you.
Yes.
My apologies. I don't know what I'm doing either, so here we go.
Thank you very much for the letter, and I was reading through it earlier before we got to this point. I just wanted to hear any of your thoughts or input on just the general feasibility of this shift, supporting the ability of the partners that you work with, either aligning with the current or any new incentive programs to take advantage of those as, or from the developer standpoint, and what your thoughts are on approaching this through a pilot approach or kind of a phased approach.
I think that there is work that needs to be done on the incentives that are the current incentives in the zoning code. They really aren't incentives for a developer. I think we would like to explore those. We have looked at trying to implement some of the incentives on other projects, but they just weren't feasible. I would consider just, the easiest approach right now is really to just modify the application requirements. I think that's one that staff has recommended that could be implemented immediately. I would suggest that as the first big step because that could really change everything. As far as a pilot program, I think really your goals are to bring housing to the market, right? So you have the ability to look at a rezoning application and see if it matches your goals according to the regional plan. And so really, I don't know why you would do a pilot. If the goal is to bring housing to the market, let's just go for it and allow developers to rezone and to rezone quickly, because that really will bring the housing to the market in a quick manner. And as far as infrastructure, really, I think that can be figured out with the site plan, because there's just so many requirements now in the current application that it takes about a year or more and hundreds of thousands of dollars, close to $1 million, before you ever even submit an application just to get everything ready to go. And there's no guarantee. It's just such a risk to a developer to invest so much money without a guarantee of a rezone. I mean, there's never guarantees, but to invest so much money up front and then have everything just fall apart, it just really would be better to just simplify the process, let's get going, and then we can submit a site plan later. I like that approach too. I think that would work. I think that there's a lot of great recommendations, and if you saw, I sent you actually all my red lines, and by accident in a way, but it was okay, because I realized, you know what, you realized everything that I was agreeing with and everything that I would change on the application, so it was all good, but thank you for the question.
Thank you very much.
All right, David Hayward.
Good evening, everybody. It's a little frustrating to be up here in our role as president of Flagstaff for Affordable Housing. We're a group that's focused on regulatory reform to increase the supply and attainability of housing in Flagstaff. And when staff come up with great ideas like this one, we don't have anything to complain about. But in all seriousness, I think it is important to note, right, that under past leadership that we've seen in development services, folks were pretty content to shuffle paper from one side of the desk to the other, right? We put in applications, you process the application. If it doesn't work, then too bad. Having folks like Michelle and Tiffany here who are willing to put in the extra mile and the extra effort to say, that's not enough, and we want to improve our processes as well, and we want to do a better job. It's just really encouraging. But to kind of get into the meat of this, I think what's being talked about here, right? It isn't getting rid of a lot of our requirements and our public participation. It's just changing the times at which those happen, right? So, and changing when us as developers have to, expend those costs, right? To Charity's point, I just had a project that didn't go through, and we had $150,000 in expenses on that project that are gone, right? I'm sure the lawyers and the architects are happy they got their money, but it's not been put to use. Those are not costs that we avoid, right, by going through this process. We have to spend that money at some time or another to do the TIA or the WISA or the architectural design. It's just doing it when we're further down the process so that we can be more confident that our project's going to happen. I think, to Councilmember Aslan's point, right, about to build what, I think the answer there lies in to build what's in the zoning code and the regional plan, right, and our specific plans for our various neighborhoods. In a sense, when we focus so much on the individual project and the real nitty-gritty details of that, right, down to the type of flowers that we're going to plant in the front yard, we lose focus on making sure that we're meeting the goals, right, the strategic goals, the policy goals, the stuff that you guys should really be doing, and not talking about flowers in the front yard, right? And I think that comes to my last point of, this is also going to be a good thing for you guys and a good thing for staff, right? Because you get to spend the time on those decisions, those strategic decisions. Staff gets to spend the time on those things and doesn't waste their time going through details on a project that might never happen because things change 3 years down the road. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Tyler Dunham.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tyler Denham. I'm here as the Executive Director for Flagstaff for Affordable Housing to express support for staff's suggested improvements to the rezoning process. The current zoning for a large portion of the remaining developable land in Flagstaff isn't aligned with the regional plan or the goals of the 10-year housing plan and carbon neutrality plan. Those plans describe a future that Flagstaff wants: more attainable housing options and development patterns that cut carbon emissions. But zoning determines what actually gets built. So if the zoning doesn't match, we won't achieve that future. This is most clear with the large tracts of land zoned as rural residential, which generally limits the number and variety of homes we can build and pushes development towards large lot homes that are more expensive and harder to serve with transit and walkable architecture. Exactly the outcomes our plans are trying to move away from. So we need to make it easier to rezone parcels that aren't aligned with our plans, and it's a time-sensitive issue. Over the past 5 years, permits were issued for 139 acres of rural residential development. Rising housing costs are making it more and more attractive to develop those areas by right, which undermines our goals and eliminates any opportunity for you to negotiate other public goods. Rezoning those parcels has to be more attractive than by right development. By right developments get less attention because they don't come before city council in the same way that rezonings do, but that doesn't make them better for Flagstaff. It's quite possible that by simplifying and improving the rezoning process, you actually get more opportunities to negotiate with developers for public goods because more of them actually choose to go through the rezoning process. That's my comments. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. That's more time to talk about what kind of flowers are in the front yard. All right, council. Comments, questions? Councilmember Matthews.
Michelle and Tiffany, I just really want to thank you for taking this one-line fair item and really running with it to, you know, I felt the excitement when we talked about it, like, oh, and we could do this and this and this and this, because I just really appreciate your vision that you bring to your division and the changes that you've seen that we need to make, and just opening up that door to make the process simpler so that we can get more housing and more affordable housing, and get away from people just defaulting to by right and building a lot of 1 acre lots because it's just more of a sure thing and it's just easier that way. So I really appreciate, I know you guys put a lot of work into it. You know, we had other conversations on a slightly different topic when we talked about incentive policy and stuff that I look forward to having that come to council as well. But I just want to thank you guys for the work, and I know that, you know, we come up with these ideas and then you have to put all this work into it. You know, maybe not on your radar, but I could tell when we met that this was something that was just like, great, thank you for opening the door and let's get going. And we need this. We need this. I hear from developers all the time that it's just such a strenuous and long process with no guarantees to build what they, you know, hope to build, which is if they want to rezone for a project that's multifamily and stuff, you know, we would want to look at it. And we do have, how I understand it and how it's been repeated today, we still have those mechanisms in place to make sure the product that they're going to bring after the rezoning is approved, they still have to go through the process. It's just a different timing. So the developer is assured they get to develop multifamily or whatever that is, and then they can work on the design because things change over the years. And I know there's some properties that are 400 and 500 acres, and they may not look the same of what they think they want to develop today, but at least we know it's going to be multifamily or whatever that is, and the basic concepts there. So I really appreciate all the work that you guys put into it, and I thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you again, Michelle and Tiffany and the full team for putting in so much work on this. I'm definitely supportive of the concept, very appreciative of all the steps that you're taking to move us toward reducing the unnecessary early barriers to development and to housing. I think overall, this is offering really good opportunities to support affordability and sustainability and create those further opportunities for development. I think the main thing that I want to ensure is that this and any shifts that we're making in our processes are really paired with the strong standards that are needed to ensure that we're actually achieving the goals that we're setting out to do. Clear understanding from the public on what is or is not being approved at rezonings, and flexibility to test before moving into full adoption to, again, ensure that this is actually achieving the goals that we hope it will. I think one of the challenges goes back to a question from Councilmember Aslan. When we talk about this is making development easier, but what kind of development? Wanting to ensure that this is actually increasing our supply of both affordable and attainable housing specifically. What we don't want to do is make the process so easy in a way that it also makes it easier to develop the types of development that we don't actually need to meet our goals. And I think everything that you've set up here is really aimed at ensuring that this is meeting the goals that we've set for affordability and sustainability. It just needs to be really clear that that's what we're achieving. The other challenge is, of course, going back to the discussion of the existing incentives and possible expansion of those, just knowing that those are not fully incentive enough to promote more affordability, better rents or purchase prices, or that combined goal of affordability and sustainability. I would worry about relying on them to keep up with our desired community benefits, both in terms of both of those goals. So I think my general direction on this would be to do what we can to firm up both our certainty that this is a direction that will yield the results we want to see, and our certainty that the processes and incentives we have in place are really strong enough to support those goals, and so that they can move forward in the same direction at the same time as much as possible. But thank you again for all of, I mean, this was a lot of work that I know you all did to get us here, and so very, very appreciative of that. Thank you.
If I can just add, I would like to say that the incentives is still a big part of the last cap project. We'll be coming later in a few months with the final recommendations, and the incentives really do remain one of the biggest items that we know we have to put a lot of work into. So that will actually go hand in hand with everything that you've asked for.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you for all of your work on this. I'm excited that this is here tonight. I am in support of all of the options you have provided for us. And I like what Ms. Lee was stating about streamlining the application requirements like now, like tomorrow. I think that that is something, it's a low-hanging fruit that we can do that will really make a difference. So my direction would be to start there. I like that we can phase this in. I think that that kind of takes away my concern of needing the pilot. I don't know what other council members will say, but as long as we're phasing it in and very transparent with the community on what's happening and where we're at with it, I'm good with that. And I like what Councilmember House said about keeping our community values throughout the process. And as long as we're doing that, my direction is keep going. Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I'm hearing general consensus, but do you have the specific direction that you were looking for?
I do. I think the only direction that I would like maybe is, how does the council want to be involved? Are you comfortable with us just moving forward? So starting with the code changes or the application changes, I actually think that people will be very happy to come in tomorrow and start doing that. But could it be an information item that we come back and just say, hey, this is showing you what was the application and what we've changed? Do you need to see that? Do you trust, I don't want to say do you trust staff? This is something that that we're changing that will be a change in what you all see, so I want to make sure you're comfortable with that. So I guess I need some guidance on how you want to participate.
For me, I think that enough detail at the right time to bring the public along
Okay.
with what's happening and make sure that the public understands what's happening. I personally don't feel the need to see applications side by side to know that level of detail, but let me ask my colleagues. Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I know that you have the experience in your prior life before City of Flagstaff on some of these recommended changes, so you already have a pretty good idea of how it's going to flow. I agree with the mayor that I couldn't identify the current application now compared to changes you made. I'm not a planner, I'm not a zoning code expert, but you've already done a good job, and Tiffany's done a good job of bringing to us as you're making the changes, saying, and this is what we're implementing now. And for me, I'm trusting your experience because I don't have a degree in that. You know, the outcome is what we're looking for, and I support that. And as you make the changes, come back and just let us know so the public can know would be great.
Perfect.
All right, I'm seeing head nods and thumbs ups and thumbs up.
Okay, it's the direction we like them.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, next up, we have open call to the public. Dennis Givens.
Hey, how's it going, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, staff, citizens of Flagstaff? I'm Dennis Givens, the Public Safety and Sustainability resident. And I wasn't going to speak today, but I said what's up to the anti-flock dude, and he didn't say or acknowledge me, so I felt pretty hurt. So I was just going to say, what was I going to say, actually? I'm just kind of freestyling this today. But yeah, so the cameras are gone. I actually was walking across the intersection. I noticed one intersection had them and one didn't. So I was wondering if maybe they're the county's flock cameras. Not too sure, but I thought I saw a camera down. But anyways, what are we gonna do about the missing and murdered indigenous people? Are we gonna protest that, or form a citizens brigade or something? We really need to work on that, and I feel like that's really important. And also, man, I'm so there's a lot of energy up here for sure, so I'm kind of nervous. But I definitely think that we definitely need to work on that for sure. And we definitely, we got to curb technology. I'm down for legislation protecting our private data, but we cannot deny how important this data, or not data, but technology has helped us as citizens of this country. And I also wanted to mention, the Communist Party of China has been working with the cartels, and they have been pushing fentanyl into our countries. You can look this up. And it's sad to say that. And we do need immigration reform. We don't need a police state, but we definitely need to find a balance in our approach, because our mission statement is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all. And I think we can do that, and we can be bipartisan and really help each other out and protect the city and make sure there's justice being served. And look at the opium wars, England and China. You don't think people do that? It happens, and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theory, but I just want to make sure that everyone's safe and protected, and we have a million years of prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next up, informational items 2 from Mayor, Council, and City Manager, and future agenda item requests. And I will start with Councilmember Matthews.
I have nothing, thank you.
Councilmember Garcia.
I just wanted to give a huge shout out to our first responders and public safety Flagstaff Police Department for their work that happened this last week during that shooting incident and the tragedy that we suffered in the West Glen Mobile Home Park neighborhood. And I also wanted to mention that I'm going to be following up with all the members of that neighborhood by going door to door throughout the next week or two, whenever it's determined by professionals that it's a good time for a public official to be visiting and just checking in, making sure they're doing okay. Chief Connolly helped me come up with that idea, and I really appreciate him for that, and I think that it's a benefit for our community, for our public servants to also be committed to make sure that, you know, after the services is gone, after the lights and sirens have passed, that we stay committed to checking in with those who might be traumatized by such a kind of secular individual event that doesn't happen very often in this community. And I want to make sure that that community feels heard and feels cared for by myself. I also invite any other council members that want to join me through that mission. It's always funner to have a buddy when you're doing these type of things. Thank you.
Councilmember Aslan.
Thank you. I know Councilmember Matthews was hoping to get out of here just before 5. I guess we're over the line by a minute or two. I do have a fair I'd like to introduce, given that we're having a bit of a shorter meeting tonight. This fair came to me from a presentation provided by our very own Dr. Ben Ruddle at Northern Arizona University during a Coconino Plateau Water Advisory Council meeting I chaired late last year. He and his colleague, Dr. Richard Rushforth, recently published a paper that calls for policymakers to consider adopting a set of socioeconomic water productivity measures as policies for how the community utilizes its water resources. An example would be a data center knocks on our door. They approach our business attraction team for whether Flagstaff can accommodate their water demand. The question wouldn't be whether Flagstaff has the water or not, as that is a bit subjective from what Aaron Young tells me. But the question Dr. Ruddle suggests is, what would be the return on investment per gallon of water to meet our policy? Does the company bring the gross and net revenue, payroll, jobs, income tax, sales tax, property tax that we established to be essential to Flagstaff's long-term economic stability and sustainability? So I'm proposing City Council work with our water services team to develop such policies. Data centers are not exploring our region yet for serious consideration for sites, not because we don't have enough water, but because we don't have enough broadband bandwidth yet. The day we do, Flagstaff will become attractive to data centers. This community will not want and cannot afford to accommodate data centers, no matter what Arizona state law allows for. So we need to be as proactive about this as possible. I did get Aaron's help in formulating this request, and I would recommend tapping into Ben Ruddle directly, Dr. Ben Ruddle directly on this topic, or at least checking in with him through Aaron. And I know there's some other stuff going on around this topic generally as well. Feel free to fold that into the mix however you deem most efficient.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I do have one quick thing. I do want to acknowledge that we went through a pretty heavy week, and I just, my heart and thoughts have been with our community and our police, fire, and everyone that was involved in the events that happened. This Saturday, there is a barbecue fundraiser. It's 11 to 3 here at the City Hall parking lot. And they will be accepting donations. There'll be t-shirts for sale, live music, raffle items, and it's a great way for the community to get together and support one another. So I hope I see you all. Thank you.
Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I wanted to share tonight was just to add my voice in sending out that support to the Flagstaff Police Department, the Fire Department, and the full DPS team who were impacted by those events last week. I know it was a very heavy week and the community was facing a lot, but seeing the ongoing presence of all of our first responder teams and knowing that they were still doing their duty and still part of the community in such meaningful ways made a big impact for a lot of people. And so just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that, as well as the members of staff, including mayor and assistant city manager Anderson, for coordinating the community event that I know meant a great deal to a lot of people, and really touched the community in ways that I don't think have even fully been spoken to yet, but it really made a big impact, and I think it's really important to acknowledge that, so thank you all.
Councilmember Spence.
Thank you, Mayor. My comment is to give a big vote of thanks to the Beautification and Arts Commission for their action to replace the decrepit logs on the rail car behind Old Two Spot. The Forest Service provided the logs, and I think visitors to our community will be appreciative of the fact that the rotten logs are gone and Ponderosa pine logs are now in place. So thanks to the commission.
I wanted to echo the thanks to staff, to Assistant City Manager Shannon, and to Kevin Fensel, to Chief Conley, Deputy Chief C, Scott Overton for coming into Public Works and opening up the building and being there all day, as well as to Counselor Catherine Romero, Taros, Victim Witness Services, Sharon Manor, the 3 excellent service dogs that were at the lunch and gathering as well. And to the neighbors for coming out and continuing to be vulnerable and sharing their feelings with fellow neighbors. And thanks to council, and it was just a heavy day, but it was a really lovely day. And a reminder to the public that Saturday is the I Heart Pluto Festival at the Orpheum Theater it starts at 5 p.m. And it is a great time and you should come out. Oh, and I have another shout out to Marianne Sullivan as the PD legal advisor for her help last week. It's been mentioned a couple of times that last week was just really rough. And Marianne, the whole Flagstaff Police Department, Flagstaff Fire Department, city staff demonstrated a lot of bravery and skill. And we're all very, very appreciative of that. City Manager?
Mayor and Council, just a couple of updates. Just, again, I can't say enough about the way our team responded to the event last week, and just thanks. I can add more names to that. Ryan Saxby, our HR director, who is working with Marianne closely, our Public Works team, our facilities team, EM, we can have a long list. But it was a great effort and just really showed that our team and our community can come together in a time of crisis. I wanted to just respond to some of the questions about the flock cameras. So we are currently looking into, our understanding is the flock cameras that are in our contract with Flock have been removed, and we're checking on that. But there is a lot of misinformation in this community about the cameras. They may not be Flock cameras, they may not be our cameras. So I just wanted to just pass that along to all of you. As soon as we get that information, we will post something again on our website, just clarifying that. So, and just, you know, if the community can just give us a little patience, we've had a pretty rough week at the city of Flagstaff. I also just wanted to give an update. So we are, Councilmember Aslan mentioned data centers. We are likely going to bring something back to council on that item in the next couple of months or so. So that's going to be on the horizon as well. I know there's a lot of legislative activity on that. And Mayor, do you want to talk about the legislative hearing tomorrow? Did you already talk about that? Did I miss it? Okay, so the mayor will again be going down to the legislature tomorrow to testify on a piece of legislation that would provide LIHTC funding to rural communities, so $2 million in LIHTC funding. It would be a huge win for this community. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but you know, the rural communities don't always get the LIHTC dollars that the larger counties do. So, Mayor, thank you for going down. This is the second hearing. This is the second committee hearing. And I believe it's in appropriations tomorrow. So thank you for doing that. And with that, I don't think I have any more updates. Thank you.
All right. Oh, okay.
My apologies. I just had a question. I know we had the conversation about next week's agenda and didn't have any comments then, but it completely blanked on me that we still have funding in the Council Initiative Fund, and I'm wondering if we can add an item to next week's agenda to talk about potentially making a contribution to the donations being gathered for the, I forget the name of the official organization, but you know what I'm talking about, for the memorials and support for the families of the DPS agents that were lost.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, City Manager?
I have another update after you have this
You're
discussion.
you're
Thank
poised. You looked poised. Yes, we can talk about adding that. And City Manager.
I just wanted to provide a reminder that we have our deputy city manager meet and greet tomorrow, city council chambers at 5 o'clock. We have interviews all day, and we have 6 candidates who will be here, likely some of them watching the meeting today, so everybody behave themselves. But looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.